Hi guys, welcome back to The Baseline. Thanks for joining me. Hope you guys are having a great day. Today we're going to be talking about the great democratic flip from Gaza to this $100 million lie. So did you guys know in just 8 years, the Democratic Party flipped its entire stance on Israel and Palestine by more than 50 points? In political terms, that's not just a swing, that's a full-on earthquake that swallowed the ground underneath them. And if you think that's just another poll, think again, guys. Stay with me because this gets crazier and crazier. And by the end of this episode, you're going to see exactly how billions in lobby money, brutal war footage, and a bunch of stubborn, young, pissed off voters just ripped the old rule book into absolute shreds. So let's take a moment. We're going to use our imagination and we're going to set the scene. All right, let's rewind back to 2017. Feels like another lifetime ago. But at this time, Obama is out. Trump just got elected in. And if you'd asked the average Democrat back then, who do you sympathize with more, Israel or Palestine? They'd probably just shrug their shoulders and say, yeah, Israel, of course. Now, Gallup had the number where Democrats were about 13 points more sympathetic to Israel than Palestine. The party line was basically support our democratic ally. Democracy good, terrorism bad, let's move on. But fast forward to today, 2024 or 2025, that same poll shows Democrats now sympathize with Palestinians by more than 40 points. Now that's not just a flip. That's like going from Pepsi to Diet Coke and realizing you just hate soda altogether. And here's the kicker to all this stuff. The younger Democrats, like 18 to 49, if 49 is young, I don't know, have shifted even harder. In 2017, they leaned Israel by 14 points, but now they lean Palestine by 57 points. That's a 70-point swing. That's insane. And I rarely see shifts like this to that degree on any poll. Now, why did it happen? And what were the power moves that were involved in all this? There were three. And how did this go from pro-Israel to, let's free Palestine chants at college commencement speeches? So let's try to break it down. There are three power moves at play here that changed so much of this. So move number one is the forever war concept. It just broke the spell. And it's obvious, right? Israel's actions for decades was framed for Americans as a David versus Goliath concept. Brave democracy surrounded by bad guys all over the place. And 9/11 really locked that narrative in tighter than a TSA pat down. And if you ever hinted at Palestinian suffering back then, you got labeled a terrorist or a terrorist sympathizer or anti-Semite. But then came October 7th, the Hamas attack, and it was horrific, brutal, beyond words. But the response, Gaza's been hit so hard and so relentlessly that entire apartment blocks have just turned into absolute dust. And you can't hide that anymore because social media exists now. Your phones, your CNN now, except there's no commercials in between, no arthritis pills commercials. The world saw it. The world saw children buried in rubble, lines for food trucks being bombed out, and for millions, something snapped. Like, wait, are we really funding all this? Now, move number two was the squad versus the super PACs. Now that enters the money fight. And here's where it gets kind of juicy, because back in 2018, America elected the squad, whatever that means, Rashida Tlaib, Imar Omar, the first two Muslim women in Congress. And suddenly, being pro-Palestinian wasn't just a fringe opinion. It was on the House floor. And cue the panic, right? Cue the DMFI, the Democratic Majority for Israel people. Basically, AIPAC's younger cousin with a giant checkbook. Now, they've spent millions to swat down any Democrat who dared question the official script. Bernie got targeted. Donna Edwards, they put in $7 million to stop her comeback. Nita Alam in North Carolina, millions spent to shut her down. She lost by 2 points. And if you ever wonder, does money buy elections? Well, yeah, sometimes I think it really does. And sometimes no, but to me, it seems like a lot of our politicians are bought and paid for. But it definitely, definitely does something. Because the real goal wasn't to win every fight anyway. It was to scare everyone else. And guess what? It worked. At first, at least. Now, this moves us to number 3, the backfire. And here's the plot twist to all of this. All that money did something else. It radicalized the base. So for younger voters, they hate nothing more than feeling like they are being silenced. Tell them to sit down, they stand up louder. Spend millions to block their candidate, they donate millions more. And it's a political whack-a-mole, for lack of a better way of putting it. But the moles, they get smarter every election cycle. And the final nail is Gaza. The war images didn't come from Fox or CNN. They came from TikTok, Instagram, Telegram. They were raw, shaky phone videos that didn't get sanitized. Suddenly, the PR spin lost the human horror show. And the base moved faster than money could keep up with. So it brings us to all the contractors and the gunfire and all the many stories behind it, right? So if we zoom in on the scandal, you'll probably missed it, but the people paying attention didn't. Earlier this year, an Associated Press video dropped, and contractors supposedly tied to an American aid group caught on tape shooting towards Palestinians lining up for food. 15 shots. And you heard voices say things like, I think you hit one. And some other voices said, hell yeah, boy, we hit him. And now you couldn't see the shooting on camera. It was a big dirt mound, but there was audio and there were witnesses. Now, there's an Israeli government that didn't deny it outright. They launched an investigation, and the result, IDF rules of engagement suddenly changed. Now, soldiers complained they couldn't just fire warning shots so freely anymore. But when policy shifts overnight, there was a PR disaster that was very, very real. Now, you think voters didn't notice? You think young activists didn't clip that and share it to millions? Because yeah, they did. And it stuck. And it created a party leadership crisis. Now, here's the second layer to all this. Not only is the base revolting, they want new bosses too. So latest numbers, 62% of Democrats want to ditch their own party leaders because they suck. But 62%, that's not mild. And that's a full-on pack your bags and go home. And look, we know why. Gaza's the lightning rod, but it's bigger than that. It's decades of old guard triangulating, cashing lobby checks, hugging progressives at pride rallies and ghosting them on foreign policy. You can't run on equity for all and then turn your back on bombed out children. The contradictions they're just too out in the open now. Now, even Richie Torres, the human megaphone for unconditional Israeli support, went radio silent for weeks. Like no tweets, no posts, nothing. And that's saying something for a man who tweets about breakfast cereal if it gets him a headline. Now, here's a quick little history recap, if you will. If we do rewind a little bit and look at the strategy, AIPAC for decades didn't even need a super PAC. They did it old school, like max donations, free trips to Israel. Hey, want to fly first class or business class? come see the Holy Land, all of that kind of stuff. Meet the Prime Minister, sure. That was all going on. And just make sure you keep voting as we ask was basically the trade-off. Now, if you cross them, suddenly you'd find yourself with a brand new, well-funded primary opponent. It only took a few examples to scare a whole caucus straight. But the world changed. You can't just run, shut up and support Israel anymore when voters are reading firsthand dispatches from bomb shelters and bread lines. Which brings us to the voter rage. And let's talk about voter rage for a moment, because where does all this go? And I'll tell you, this is a slow fuse with a loud boom at the end. It won't flip overnight. Congress doesn't move like that. But watch the next 2 cycles. Watch young Democrats in swing states. Watch campus movements. Watch city councils. This isn't just a DC thing. It's a generational pressure cooking. And this team's going to find an escape at some point. Now, will the party listen? I don't know. Or will they just double down and try to buy silence for another cycle? So, I don't know. We'll have to see. But by the way, have you guys ever noticed how we act shocked when young people get radicalized? Like, we didn't all binge Star Wars as kids, rooting for rebels blowing up the Death Star. That's the hilarious irony. America raised generations on the underdog stories. Then freaks out when people actually side with the underdog. Now, maybe Disney knew more about foreign policy than Congress did, but the final stakes, I don't know. This isn't about being anti-Israel or pro-Hamas. I wouldn't let the TV pundits frame it that way. This is about accountability. It's about human life, about tax dollars not turning into drone footage for kids pulling bread from rubble. And here's the question for all of us, because this part is real. If 100 million in lobby money can't hold back this wave, what happens next? Because if a lot of these politicians, got clipped, but the base only grew louder, what happens next? So next time you see a politician tap dancing around Gaza, look at who's paying them to dance. Because then look at what's really filming the rubble and ask yourself, which story do you trust more? So where does this leave us? Where does it leave you and I? And I don't know. I mean, we're looking at an old system crumbling in slow motion, a new base forming underneath it, and a lot of uncomfortable donors realizing that the old playbook is leaking gas right now. And maybe, just maybe, if enough people stay awake, stay loud, and vote with both their heart and their head, this issue won't be silenced next cycle. All right, everyone. I really appreciate you guys watching, and stay sharp. It's tough nowadays. Stay curious, stay loud, and remember, we're all going to succeed and make the world a better place, if we can just take a moment to, think more deeply, a little bit more clearly, and act wisely together. I think we could do that. Anywho, guys, thanks for watching The Baseline. We'll catch you in the next round, and cheers, everybody.